That's on. Yeah, no battery. Okay, cool.
Thank you for coming out and finding that your opposition. So tonight, Mark Dewsbury is going to talk about all sorts of things. Stuff. Possibly. And condensation. I'm just going to hand over to Mark.
Thank you. If I do this, I'm being edited. Sorry. Thanks for coming along. So this bit, this is not the slideshow. This is a booklet we finished a week ago, and so it's not finished. I'm probably going to look at it again in about a month's time when you've walked away and see all the things that are wrong with it, and come back and just tidy up a bit of text and organisation. But generally speaking, it's correct. So if you want, flick me an email and I'll send you a PDF copy. We've been doing research for the state and federal government for the last 7 years on condensation and mould in Australian buildings. And as part of that, given talks in Darwin, Perth, Bunbury, Brisbane 3 times. South-West Queensland has huge problems. Sydney, Melbourne, everywhere except for Adelaide. But Adelaide's got a nice dry climate. So, yeah. So that's what that is. Yeah. Got nice beaches though. So that's what, that's been playing in the background. So I'm happy to email that out to people. Yes. We can do that. I'm in this room. It's old fashioned. Yes. That too much or not enough? Or much? Oh, yeah. I love that. Good. So this talk is going to be a bit of a, not a dog's breakfast, but a bit of variety. And I guess, because I originally started with is an energy efficient housing a health hazard, and it is. There are lots of issues with that. But considering talking with people about who might be coming tonight, I sort of made it a bit more general as well. So I'm the nexus of how to design low energy buildings, how we empirically validate that, and how buildings are built. And so what that's about is that empirical validation is how we measure them. And most of our regulations now and probably into the future are about how we design them, and there's very little measurement of how that should work. And I get lots of award-winning buildings, which are really, they are one not based on a design, but how that should work's a different story. And then how they're built. And in that sort of context, a recent review in Victoria found that more than 80% of buildings were non-compliant, meaning that we've got the building regulations, which are the minimum requirements for construction, the minimum, and 80% were non-compliant, meaning built less than code. And that's a range of, like, not just energy, but other aspects as well, fire escapes, toilets, all different things that were not compliant. And New South Wales, yes. Current new buildings. Yeah, so this is so people going in 6 months after they're built to review if they were built to the regulations and finding out they weren't. And New South Wales, we've done stuff in New South Wales, they're around 75 to 85% as well. South East Queensland is an interesting experience. So we have issues. And in that sort of context, a lot of focus for the 2019 edition of the National Construction Code is how to try and improve compliance. The problem is the only way to improve compliance, there's two sides. One is training, which I talked there about. Training is actually going the opposite direction, getting less and less training. And the other side is that, well, if you're going to do inspections, well, the people who do the inspections actually know what they're inspecting, and a lot don't at this point in time. And then if they're going to do inspections, it's going to cost money. And every time that's mentioned, the affordable housing flag gets waved, and that's the end of the story. But the fact that 80% aren't built to code doesn't seem to matter. So we have this to and fro. And yes, yep. The likes of, what's it called? Rainfall in England. 3/4 of large high-rise buildings are non-compliant in Australia at this point in time, including many public buildings in Tasmania. So, yes. So as informed Australians, we acknowledge the need to reduce carbon emissions by improving the thermal envelope and equipment performance of all buildings. However, since 2004, the focus in Australia has been on stars and watts, as in watts per square metre or whatever it might be, and without a deep understanding of how the building works as a system. I'm sure you've all seen these sorts of images, how our CO2 emissions keep going up and up and up, awesomely. How our ocean temperature is rising, and was it on the news last week, tropical fish that used to exist 3,000 k's north of New Zealand can now be caught off the waters of New Zealand. So a fraction of a degree, and that's what we're talking about, a fraction of a degree increase in ocean temperatures has a huge impact on the whole planet. 75% of the planet is oceans. So what's happening on the land we're on is quite small compared to what's happening in the oceans. And I guess it's like you take a glass of water out of the fridge, and if you had a really good measuring device, the fraction of a millimetre, as we leave the glass on the table, it actually increases in size because the water's warming up. And so think about it at a planetary level, and that's a significant issue. The other issue is this: Australians still have the biggest houses on the planet. So we talk about climate change, but we at the same time have the biggest houses. So it's a bit of a contradictory statement there. And then we take it down to what's that mean at a square metres per person. So Australians have 89 square metres of house space per person. So that's bigger than this room per person on average. And if we go to Germany, it's 55. You can see Sweden's 40. Italy's 31, smaller buildings. China's 20. So we really need to be thinking about what is our house size. Please turn your phones off. Yep. Oh yeah, we're better than the USA, yes. Yes. I wouldn't use that as a good gauge. And then this is the thing I guess we often see from the government's perspective. Oh, Australia's not doing anything. Look, we're tiny. We're doing this. We don't count. Iran makes more. But then when you actually flip the coin and say, what's it mean per head of capita? And Australians are the worst carbon emitters on the planet. So that's an interesting situation in itself. And then this is Australia with 25 million. And then turning the globe around a little bit, and we get Southeast Asia, and there's 2,000 million people on that same area of land. And I wouldn't say northwest China is comfortable to live in, or Mongolia, but there's 2,000 million on the same land area. So that's interesting. We could do this. This is typical of Hong Kong. 40 stories, 480 apartments per building, 2,000 residents plus per building. Average estate is 10,000 residents, but up to 50,000 is quite common. That's half of one system in one building. No, sorry, in one estate. 5 stories of communities, facilities, schools, shops, everything's everything there. Services, government offices, medical, retail, and there's normally a bus station, or a bus depot, I should say, or a railway station in the basement. All a part of the planning approval process and the building construction process. And they even do this, so the whole thing's modelled in the context of vehicles, public transport, private transport, airflows around the buildings, all those sorts of things. And every single room has access to daylight and access to an operable window. Now that doesn't happen in Melbourne, doesn't happen in Sydney, doesn't happen in Hobart. We have many apartment buildings where you can be 3 or 4 rooms in from where the window is. So that's Hong Kong has better regulations for apartments than Australia. So, yep. So that's one pathway. Another way is places like, older European cities. There's Genoa. Genoa's got 600,000 people. So that's 2.5 times we're at 500,000. So it's a population of Tasmania in one city. But rather than 20 to 40-storey apartments, most of it's 8 stories high. And you got the old parts of the city, like this bit here, which most of it's pedestrian space, very little vehicles. Then as you come out from there, you can see up on the fringe here, the other apartment towers, where it's a bit more about vehicle access. But the public infrastructure for trams and buses is quite extensive. Most people just walk. So I guess that's a bit of context about, what could we be doing? Hobart is one of the most unsustainable cities on the planet. And that comes back to that same reason. It's got the population of Hobart's about 200,000, but the land mass that's occupied by Hobartians is phenomenal. So it's one of the most unsustainable cities on the planet. Might be a nice city, but it's extremely unsustainable. And so regulations, in 2003, we had our first regulations regarding, we need to do something about energy in buildings. It was talked about in 2000, but it took to 2003 to put it in the regulations. In 2005, 6, 9 and 10, we've had various amounts of improved or a desire to reduce the energy used for heating and cooling in buildings. And more recently in the 2016, more aspects about hot water and insulating hot water pipes. Some hot water pipes. I went to the house the other day and not a single hot water pipe was insulated. So we're happy to heat the water to 60 degrees and then let it sit in pipes that aren't insulated. So that's where we're going. And at the moment, the next code is in 2016. It's coming out. Coming out at the end of this year for action in May next year. At this stage, there's no changes in the energy requirements in residential buildings. What it is, thankfully, or at last, there's been lots of broad statements. You must lose natural energy, or your house should not leak so much. And hopefully, if it passes all the different approval processes, we'll have some numbers in there about what that might mean. So it might state, for example, that your house might only be able to have 10 air changes per hour or something as a number that we can actually use to say, well, it is or isn't. But this is, I guess, where the challenges we have within regulation. The greeny brownie colour, it's not brownies, it's more green than yellow, blue, green, brown. Architects get stuck on colours. Khaki, thank you. I like that. That's, I guess, what, we're talking about residential buildings, energy efficiency, thermal performance, orientation, ventilation, thermal mass, insulation and glazing. And I guess the challenge there is that all that stuff on the outer edge, there's no regulation. Okay, that's fine. Hello. Sorry. So, we can see the electricity system, reliability, affordability, sustainability, green power. Well, so, at this point in time, the focus is on low energy, more so than what's actually the source of energy. We're lucky in Tassie because we've had our hydro system and we've got a significant amount of our power generation is renewable. But other states aren't as lucky. Vehicles, what type of fuel is it? I guess I've been driving cars that use 4 to 5 litres per 100 kilometres for the last 8-9 years. But there's still a challenge to find. When we bought we've got a Honda at the moment. When we bought that 4.5 years ago, most of the cars of its size were using 10 litres per 100 kilometres. So it's we were more interested in the look and the apps on the car rather than how it's impacting on climate change and fossil fuels. Town planning, well, we're more interested in people doing developments than about how those developments could actually work with solar passive design or anything else. We just want developments. And so it goes on. So this challenge between, okay, we can try and make buildings more efficient or more, whatever it might be, but what's the other regulatory space? Oh, I know. No. And they're not designed for universal access either, in terms of when you break your leg or you want to stay in the house and get old. Exactly. Yeah. Yes, I agree totally. And then not compliant as well. And then we say, well, you know, how do we actually start to quantify delivered energy? Is it brown power, black power, green power, yellow power? Okay, we make more energy than what we use, but how is it exported and how does the system manage that? At the moment, it's not really managed that well. And then within the building, how are we managing our own energy use? And so, I guess as we're moving down this pathway of people wanting to get points for this or points for that, there's these questions about how we're actually trying to quantify things. And then there's this one. I call this the skeleton in the closet. So, actually, these 3 slides I've just shown you won't be in the PDF version because I'm on a national committee and that's how I've got them. But this one shows that, well, at this point in time, if we're good and we have lots of regulatory change, that our new buildings in 2040-ish will be zero energy. Who's going to be here in 2040? Oh, yeah, yes. Okay, right. So all the hullabaloo about desperate need for action on climate change, well, by 2040, we might be making buildings, new buildings that are required to be zero energy. So I'm just looking at the sea level rise and the ocean temperature rise, and well, it's going to keep going up. And that's just buildings. Before we start talking about houses, before we start talking about commercial buildings, before we start talking about what cars we're driving, what trucks we're driving, how many highway miles we're doing, whether the mobile phone that you're using with rare earth materials gets thrown away after 2 years, all those sorts of aspects. And I'm blaming China for not accepting our recycling rather than asking the question, well, why do you have recycling in the first place? I just think so. So this is where we were not that long ago. and at our commercial spaces, we're pretty much similar. We used to, it was about 2 or 3 degrees difference between inside and outside, and we dressed appropriately, like this building. And now we do this for houses, and commercial spaces are getting more ritzier and ritzier. So at the same, we've had significant changes in our expectations. We've had significant change in our building practices. We've had huge changes in our built fabric. And the ballad is about bushfire attack level and how that's impacted on materials used in construction. This is a window in a house we did a few years back. That's a double glazed window, and that's a rammed earth floor on a 2nd story. So that's what we call a suspended rammed earth floor on a timber frame, the stuff you do. So we have to think about thermal conductivity. That's the rate at which heat flows through buildings. Thermal mass. So where is it? How is it? How much? Is it right? Insulation. So how we think about insulation? Framing factor. That's the amount of framing material in the wall. And I talk later about what we call thermal bridging, which fits in with this, and what the insulation property of the framing is compared to the insulation value of the insulation. Client would like it, and we liked it. Yep. Thermal mass-wise, yes. 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 On a timber structure. No, you can't, sorry. Air tightness, and when people talk about air tightness being unhealthy, I'll tell them to go jump in the creek. Vapour pressure management, which is about water vapour, we'll talk about that in a little while. Thermal comfort. Most of the countries, most of the developed countries have minimum temperature, minima and maximum temperature requirements inside housing. We don't. We prefer unhealthy housing. Building environmental measurements. Okay, we're going to do this, but are we actually measuring it to prove we've actually achieved what we wanted to achieve? Woohoo. How we're simulating buildings, and I guess people who tinker in the house space look at star ratings, and all that's doing is simulating a particular scenario of the envelope of the building. It often is, I can say it's up to 30% different to reality, but it's purely a regulatory tool to compare apples with apples. Human health, building regulation, that's, stuff with the buildings. Go left of field now, Papua New Guinea. And so reduce unwanted heat loss and heat gain by using insulation. So that 120 mils of grass on the roof has an R value of about 4.5. That's what's required in a brand new house in Tasmania. The wall is 110 mils thick. There's an R value of 4. That's nearly twice what's required in Tasmania in a new house. Yes, yes, it does, yes. Shade solar radiation from surfaces and stop them getting hot. Yep, it's got nice big eaves to stop the sun hitting the facade. I'm seeing more and more houses in Tassie where there is no eaves and the facade receives full solar radiation. Permit solar radiation when required. Not really for there, but definitely for here. Appropriately sized and placed ventilation. Yep, big openings, cross ventilation, lets the building, let what heat is in there out. Appropriate access to daylight, well, they go downstairs, where there's more daylight. Appropriate location of thermal mass, well, this is in a warm climate, there is no thermal mass. You don't want thermal mass. And appropriate amount of thermal mass? Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, cooking and other things happen down here, yes. The larger the surface area per volume material, the more rapid the heat flow. Now what that means, this flat surface here, because of its access to currents, it loses heat or gains heat much slower. The grass, how it's all woven, absorbs and releases heat much quicker. The rammed earth question before, rammed earth is more porous, absorbs energy quicker, releases it quicker. Lots of different things. A brick wall that has the bricks stepping in and out absorbs energy quicker than a flat brick wall, or a rendered brick wall is even worse. So how about you think about materials in that context? Renewable resources, yep, the storm can blow, it blows away, get in the paddock and get fresh materials. Chemical and VOC free, yep, not like here. We've got formaldehyde, all sorts of volatile organic compounds that we're breathing happily, helping us die of cancer. Carbon storage, yes. The carbon from the paddock is in the straw and the logs. Embodied energy, it's got very low embodied energy is the amount of energy required to make construction materials. Carpet is one of the highest embodied energies, and so is paint. If you have a window, a timber frame window, yep, that's great, but in 2 or 3 years' time, you go give it a coat of paint, it's now created more carbon than an aluminium frame window. So just being aware of the greater circle of things. Embodied water, well, this is just paddock grass made into a house. I think it's like 30,000 litres to make 1 square metre of plasterboard. So, materials. This, I've been tinkering a bit quiet in the background regarding Tasmanian housing. There's very limited information available, or there's some remnants around the place. But whenever you read, what was his name? Robinson, thank you. When he went to, no matter what season of the year it was comfortable inside and warm. So they had the thatched grass, they were a stressed structure. These poles went 2 foot into the ground. As you can see, and they actually went over, so it's called a stressed skin structure, which the British weren't doing until very recently. And then the grass and other layers and stuff happening on the inside. So it's interesting what was happening here before we came and tore it down. This is Launceston. So this tells me that this is about our dry bulb temperature, so the temperatures outside. Internationally, between 20 and 24 degrees is seen as the regulatory point of we feel comfortable. Many countries say 18, but we know that people still put their thermostats on 21. So 20 to 24 was internationally agreed in a cooler climate as thermally comfortable. If we're in Darwin, it'd be 23 to 27. So there's a bit of, but that shows that only 5% of the year, 5% of the hours in a year, we could walk around and think, yeah, without too much worry. Only 2% gets hot, which that's right, and then 92% of the time it's cooler than what we would like. What that means is this is a typical week in summer, and the yellow band is that thermal comfort range for summer. And so it shows you, yep, we have times in summer we turn the heater on at night, or some people do, and we have the heat pump, the air conditioner on in the day. And I can, talking with the people from Aurora that we work with, the use of heat pumps in summer is phenomenal for heating at night and cooling in the day. The energy doesn't drop, it's constant. So it's interesting in terms of what's happened in modern housing. This is the other side. This is winter, and so that's our temperatures, and that band at the top is when we're comfortable. So yep, heat pumps going, flat chat. And similarly, we've measured many houses where the heat pumps are running 24/7 during winter. And so that, yeah. So what does that mean? Regulation. So the National Construction Code goals are for a nationally consistent minimum necessary standard of relevant safety, structure and fire, health, amenity and sustainability. So health and amenity. So what does that mean? So the National Construction Code is a document that follows a democratic process. It's a good example of democracy. And it's coordinated by the Australian Building Codes Board for state and territory governments. And so in that context, the most seen and heard lobbyists achieve the greatest regulatory outcomes. That's democratic. Yep. For every minister in the federal government, there's 2 coal industry lobbyists. There's 1 solar power lobbyist for the whole of government. Yeah. And I could say, I was saying before about the issue about inspections to improve compliance, having more inspections. If every person is saying we need that, there's an entire workforce from particular building representative bodies in Canberra saying that'll make houses unaffordable. So, and that's the democracy. So if we want change, we have to be heard more. That's the best way of saying it. Yes. With a person who has balance of power. Politics. So, okay, we're now making warmer houses, and this has a significant benefit for short-term and lifelong respiratory and blood conditions. 1 in 3 people over 60 who go to their GP with a chest problem, 1 in 3 end up in hospital, and it costs us about $21,000 in taxes for their short-term hospital stay. If their house was above 30 degrees, they wouldn't have that condition and they wouldn't have gone to the GP and we wouldn't have that medical cost. But how do we count energy? How do we count comfort? Are we considering air quality? Are we considering water vapour? And by the way, what are the ideal conditions for mould to spore? Okay, so we've warmed the houses up. What temperature does mould grow? Any ideas? Over 20 degrees. Oh, so we've now created a better condition in one hand, but on the other hand, we've now made this awesome breeding ground for mould. And this is, I've got this statement put later on in the talk as well, but this is from overseas. Buildings are often not used as intended by occupants. So designers and builders need to err on the side of caution and adopt robust, fail-safe built fabric solutions. So it's the role of the built fabric to manage all these issues, not the occupant. So I guess, how many people are in the living room? Does the building regulations say how many are in the living room? Does it say how many people are breathing? Does it say that the living room of this size is for 1 person, 2 people, 5 people? As I said before about when we simulate buildings, it has presumed what we call internal heat loads. So it presumes that there's going to be a certain amount of energy in that room created by laptops, computers, mobile phones, stoves, fridges. These were all presumptions based on averages. And so the moment you might have a bunch of friends over for a party and there's 20 people in the living room. So that's 20 people breathing, 20 people giving water vapor, 20 people heat load. So rarely does any room operate as per our regulatory beliefs.
I remember one lady who had condensation on the windows every morning and she said she opened up all the windows to try and dry out condensation and underdrive got more condensation.
Yes, yes. Yep, yep, yes. I was going to give a talk on condensation. I thought, no, that'd take me about 3 hours, so I skipped that one. But yeah, so I guess that even when we talk about commercial buildings have preset beliefs about how the commercial building works, how many toilets you need. But by going by the National Construction Code, I should never need to wait for a toilet. But I haven't found a pub yet that I don't need to wait 10 minutes to go to the toilet. And I pity the women because you see their queue is miles longer, but they're all code compliant. So somehow that should work. So yes, just yes. And then from looking at a bigger picture, this is sort of trying to graph where Australian regulation sits in the context of what we call poor indoor environmental quality and leaky buildings, thermal comfort, indoor air quality, indoor environmental quality, our methods of ventilation, and our fresh air supply. So we're at the bottom of the pack. New Zealand has more regulations than us. England is a bit better, USA a bit better again, and Europe. The EU talks in their regulations about indoor environmental quality and has a whole other list of requirements within that. So just where we're sitting at the moment. Yes. I like that view. I guess in the context, my research, we're doing new research for Australia, but we can't get published internationally because as the overseas editors say, but we knew this 20 years ago. But in the context of Australia, China, India, Southeast Asia, no, we're not there yet. And it does. And I've one of the things I found 4 or 5 years ago in my first meetings with several government people was that I took this about, this is why they have the rules have developed in America, and they said, but we're not America. Okay, and so we live on the same planet with the same physical properties, and we use the same materials to build buildings, but we're different. So, yes. Yes. Yeah, yes. Yep. Yes. Although yeah. The other thing is in Italy, the federal government there, well, I'm not sure at the moment, but for the last, up until recently, was investing a lot of money into supporting funds to help you fix to make your old building use less energy. So there was, England was the same before the change of government. So yeah, I think there was about 300,000 houses a year being renovated in England up until now. New regulations are coming now based on government changes. So yeah, we don't do anything for old buildings. Yeah. And I guess the advantage, in that sort of context, in a building in Italy where you've got an apartment building, even at 600 years old, is actually better insulation than a 2003 house in Australia because of all the external walls and windows which we've got in our buildings compared to the external envelope area in an old apartment building. I know, which is when Australia got built. Yep, and you walk to work. So the roads were made for walking, not for cars. Yeah. So indoor, I'll just go through what those two terms mean. Indoor air quality refers to the air quality within and around buildings, so in and around, and structures, especially as it relates to the health and comfort of building occupants. Understanding controlling common pollutants indoors can help reduce your risk of indoor health concerns. And indoor environmental quality encompasses the conditions inside a building, air quality, lighting, thermal conditions, ergonomics, and their effects on occupants or residents. Strategies for addressing IAQ include those to protect human health, improve quality of life, and reduce stress and potential injuries. Now, that's the regulation in Europe. And so that sort of context of what we're talking about, oh, you might need to put some bats in the wall. They're talking about, no, it's what the health of the occupant is. How do we have a building that provides a healthy outcome? So we think about energy flow, or the envelope energy flow. We have walls, windows, doors, thermal bridging, and that includes infiltration. Infiltration is thermal bridging. Solar shading, solar gain, energy storage. Envelope durability, so how are we managing water, water vapour, thermal bridging, and fabric ventilation. So that's the way the building can breathe. So how the subfloor, the roof space, and the walls can breathe. Fresh air supply, so how are we actually getting fresh air into our buildings? And then equipment, so HVAC, which is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And domestic hot water services. So what is our hot water system? And lamps and other appliances. This is a typical building in terms of energy flows that are passive or environmental. We have the energy coming in and out of the walls. Energy is always trying to be in equilibrium, so if it's warmer inside, the heat wants to get out. If it's warmer outside, the heat wants to come in. It's pure energy. The green is about ventilation, so air moving through the building, and the tiny greens are about building leakage. And so if the ground is on average 12 degrees Celsius, when the air above it's cooler, it's giving that warmth to what's above. And if the ground above is above 12 degrees, it's going into the ground. So just understand those basic principles of energy. Yep, that's the ground heat. Yep, that 12 degrees. Coming back, I could probably go back to that graph and look at how many hours a year the air temperature is less than 12 degrees in Tassie. Yeah. Oh, we find that about 1.2 metres and stuff we've measured up at Newnham. We get about a ½ degree variation every year. But that's at 11.8, about 12 degrees Celsius. And I don't want my house to be 12 degrees Celsius. Yes. 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 But you don't want your house to be 12 degrees Celsius. Yes. And that's one of the challenges that the regular, a lot of old books from the 1970s, before we had our expectation of comfort, things were very much about solar orientation and lots of mass and even burning. But a lot of people refuse to live in those houses now because they're too cold. Or they've retrofitted air conditioning, and because there's so much mass, the amount of energy required to condition the mass is significant. Yeah. Hydronic. Yep. But once again, it's energy to run that. This is a typical modern development in Tasmania. And except for one, I realise this one shouldn't have a circle. But these all get brownie points for facing north and having windows to the north. But at the same time, most of them, those windows, they're in full shadow from the house beside them. So on their building application, they're getting huge ticks and bonuses and even a great star rating because of all this stuff facing north. But in reality, that's a different story. Yes, and the solar gain, and yep, but not the neighbour's house. Yes, yes. Yes, yep. Yeah. Yeah. But you're building 900 mils from the boundary, and yep. Yes. Yes. Yep. Yes. And then thinking, and I've seen somewhere that they've got this gorgeous big 2.1 by 2.1 sliding door thing, and there's a 1.8 metre puddling fence, 900 mils out. But it's got all these brownie points for the building permit and yep, and solar gain and different things, but it doesn't actually happen. So then coming back to us in terms of thermal comfort, So I've got this. So me standing here, 60% of what I'm feeling is actually the temperature of the floor and those walls and the ceiling. 60% of what I feel. 20% of what I feel is actually the air temperature, and then 20% is what the airflow is. So because the airflow here is less, there'd be a bit more MRT, mean radiant temperature, and a bit more air temperature experience. If there's a big breeze, it comes down at 20. So what's important isn't necessarily what the temperature of the heat pump's pumping out, but what's the surface temperature of this and this and this. And that's the big focus in this IEQ stuff, is how much energy to condition that surface as efficiently and as quickly as possible. And there's a lot of stuff in the 80s, 90s regarding lightweight buildings. So have a very lightweight building with lots of insulation because it doesn't require much energy to condition that surface. And so it's having to think about how that works in a mixture of what is the right amount of mass to make that work. Yes. 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 So if you're in a house where you've got the heat pump running at about 26 degrees, but all of these are 12 degrees or even less, you feel cold and you'll turn the heat pump up. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Mm. Yes. What, for absorbing energy and releasing energy? Yes. Yes. Yeah. And acoustics too, but that's a different. Oh, no, you're not that paint. Sorry. Sorry. In terms of yes, in terms of flat paint, a textured paint is better. But on a different topic, many of the high texture paints have a very high plastic content, which is a different issue. Yeah, yeah. And so when we're looking at mean radiant temperature, it's about how are we ensuring that as much as possible what's around us is very well insulated. And so we need to, and so coming, I was talking before about the framing factor. So how are we reducing thermal bridging? How are we having less temperature? In America, walls are often 900 or 1200 centimeters between studs. Ours are still 450 to 400 in many buildings. We have double studs in corners, which most of the developed countries don't have. And I guess how we place our windows. Many other countries, your window is required to be on this line here, not back here, because it's what's the insulation line in the building. So if you're having to draw a red line around your whole perimeter building and working out what's your edge of insulation, and doors, windows, walls, and all lines up, which has a huge impact on thermal bridging and everything. And single noggins or no noggins, I get them all in my buildings where I see 3 or 4 noggins on the wall. So I think, oh, that's good. And those noggins are R.9 and the bats are 2.5. We get the infrared camera out and we see a different story. So how we move beyond that. Other countries require a layer of insulation outside your framing, which is once again about thermal bridging. We're still focused on thinking it all in the framing. So how we move beyond that. Just to sort of highlight what that means, every material has a thermal conductivity, that's the rate at which it absorbs energy, and its inverse being thermal resistance, the rate at which it resists heat flow. So taking that into account, if we had a building that was, what did I say, 16 degrees difference between inside and outside, probably will be that in a few more minutes. Yeah. So 4 millimetre glass will lose 4,000 watts of energy per square metre. The clay brick, 9 watts, the softwood, 20 watts, and the glass will bat 7.8 watts per square metre. So just a bit of memory about what it all means. That's why you get condensation on single glazing, 4,000 watts per square metre. Yes, if there was 16 degrees difference. Yes, yes. Watts per square metre. Yeah. Oh, that's joule seconds. So you can convert it back to joule seconds. So you can convert, yes. It would be watt hours. Yeah, it would be watts per hour. Yes, yes. Yeah. But the problem is, depending on their house age and orientation, it can be 200 to 300 years return on investment to change to double glazing. 200 to 300 years. We did a project for the Victorian government we did. Yeah, we did. Yeah. So it's about finance versus thermal comfort versus return on investment versus, yes. Yeah, yep. So concrete's about a bit better than, a bit worse than clay brick. Yes. Yep. Yeah. Actually, if you jump on the internet, there's all sorts of different websites that have published studies for all different materials. But yes, or there's a few books in the library still. Yeah. Oh, this PowerPoint in PDF, yes. Yes. And then we think about, well, we actually then make an envelope. So you can see there we have an inner surface film coefficient. Right near the edge of the material, it's where the material and the air inside the room are interchanging. So that's about 0.12. The outside one is much less because the airflow outside the building is generally more than the airflow inside the building. So they're defined values. See, our plasterboard is 0.06. Our bats on the wall. Reflective foil, this is a common thing that goes in building permits, 0.67. And our clay brick veneer of 0.18. So it gives us a wall system of 3.09. And that's following current Australian regulatory practice. I'll get back one, yep. Oh, that button doesn't work. Yep. So your question? No, does nothing. Yes. But then I applied what I do, which is I'm working in an international regulatory space, and they don't exist. Now, the reason why is that, well, there's a cavity. Between the wrap and the brick, there's a cavity. What's in the cavity? Air. Where does that air come from? Outside. What's the outside air temperature? Yes. So the supply air to the cavity is outside air temperature. Why do we count the brick as insulation? And the same thing, if you actually read the 1970s reports about reflective insulation, what's required for an airspace to work as reflective insulation? Any thoughts? Static. Oh, well, we just said the cavity is vented. So, no, it doesn't work. And I can then take a step back and say, okay, so why is Australia one of the only developed countries using reflective foil in its roof spaces or in its walls? Sorry? Lobbyists. Well said. Yes, they don't use it in Italy or America or Germany or because it's a vented airspace. So yeah. Well, because people are counting as 0.67 rather than nothing. So yes, and probably be another 6 to 10 years before our regulations catch up with overseas. But let's be better. But yeah, so we've gone from was it 3.05 down to 2.24 as we're following the international standard. So thermal bridging, we've got what happens in roof spaces. Similar, but if this is a softwood frame, we've got our bit of pine there. That's about R.818. And our bat, which is 4.2. So hot, cold, hot, cold. And the same with the walls. We end up with these sorts of things. This is a typical infrared camera. We can see every bit of the roof structure. This is another house down Signet Way. We can see all the condensation forming, where that's occurring. And then, of course, the downlights are beautiful thermal bridges and dripping. No, yeah. It's insulation, but also greater airflow. Yes, which is this one. And so that's thermal bridging because of a lack of insulation. It's thermal bridging because you can see all through here, air leaking. Now this is good construction. Bottom plate, well fixed onto floor, but it leaks. You've got timber, which is its squiggly stuff. You've got the particle board, which is its squiggly stuff. They're just joined. And there's nothing stopping air leaking through that space. And that's where we see lots of this sort of, the mould in the corners in terms of... Exactly, and why in the outside corners overseas you're not allowed to have a double stud. Outside, the insulation is wrapped all the way around to stop that thermal bridging in corners. And we see this in roof spaces all the time, and that's because the foil material, or the product, doesn't matter which it is pulled tight against the sheet metal roofing. So if the sheet metal roofing is 2 degrees Celsius, the foil is 2 degrees Celsius, and whatever moisture is in the air is condensing on the foil. Yes, but you try find a construction site where it's not. So I know, yes. And most of the time when the CSR or Fletcher's engineers get called to court cases, they'll walk in, say not installed as per specification, manufacturer specification, and walk out. Yes. Yeah. It's better to put the insulation on the outside. Much better. At this stage, yes. Oh, that stops the airflow, yes. So there's an airflow issue. So the building wrap and, how we terminate our building wrap, as done in other countries, can have a huge impact on the airflow. In my practice, we've been using a double bead of external sealant under our bottom plates for nearly 20 years. And so that gets down, then the plate goes on, which stops that. And or something else, it's gone, it'll come back. Yeah. So there's different ways you can actually address those sorts of issues. And this one's actually, we're finding more and more in Sydney, Canberra, and Tasmania, where the weatherboards are rotting from the inside out. And that's thermal bridging also. Because we're still direct fixing our cladding systems and these materials are rotting from the inside out. What I mean by that, and I'll talk about dew point a little later on, is that you've got this cold air outside and that weatherboard is against the building membrane, and you've got all this warm air on the inside of the building membrane, and that's at that point condensation is occurring. Has to be a gap. Brick veneer, we don't have the problem. Why? Because the British learnt before the Great Fire of London, you needed a cavity between your inside and outside brick. And so, purely because of that, our brick systems have adopted that method. Our other systems haven't. You just have battens. Yep. Yes. Minimum 13 mils. Yes. Yeah. Well said. Minimising. Well said. Yes. Yes. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. You never. Yeah. You don't count your cladding. Yes. Yeah. Good questions. And so this sort of thing, I guess this is an old slide with a bit of, so the whole thing about, understanding what we're talking about there, about how we're stopping the infiltration, which is thermal bridging, how we've got gaps in insulation, how we're minimising that. So, you can say you've got the wall frame, how the wrap comes in and is wrapped around, and then how your window, which of course has got that half-inch gap on two sides and the top, which it needs because the building moves and the glass doesn't, and how you protect the building wrap, and how you use spray foam or similar products in that space. So you have got more, your insulation is continuous, you're controlling the airflow, limiting thermal bridging. I've talked before about what's happening here, and I have people say, but you applied silicon to the skirting board. And you say, yeah, but if I now fill on the top of the skirting board, I can feel a draft. Because what's causing the problem is the half-inch gap between the floorboard and the wall plate under the house. So getting under the house with a can of bog standard cheap Bunnings spray foam and applying a thin bit of spray foam where that gap is means the boards can continue to expand and contract, but the airflow isn't there anymore. So light switches, actually that's interesting. Had a house Hobart Way a few weeks ago, and all the power points are growing mould. Why? Warm inside air, quality of building up around where the electrical services have been done was an issue, and so that there's condensation occurring and mold growing at every power point. Yes, exactly. That breeze is always there. If you hold your hand over the three hole thing, what do you call those? The three holes, you can feel the breeze. Yes. And the same with plumbing. And heat pumps, we often go heat pumps and they just punch a hole through the wall, put a plastic cap here, a plastic cap there, and that's it. So we often find that they leak quite well too. So just being aware of all those penetrations and things that are air leakage, which is a thermal bridging issue. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yep, and I would say Tassie is quite good in many respects. It is. You go to Sydney and Melbourne where it's the new housing estates, and each contract has X hours on that house. And they leave when that time is up, wherever it got to. So I've seen houses where literally half the insulation is missing, building up sort of partly on, but they're on to the next house because that's the time they've got. So, yes. Yes. I'm telling you how to fix them as well. So, condensation and mold, they don't play a role. No reputable insurance company on the planet will insure you for condensation and mold. It's a design fault or a construction fault. It's not an event, it's a fault in the design and construction of the building. We've had a few ish, I can't say that on, yes. Let's say that regulators have attempted to force builders. The problem is it's built to code. Builders complied with code. So then you could say, well, what about the professional? You're employing a professional to do something for you. And condensation's been known about since Moses. Leviticus. Leviticus talks about how to manage mold in your house. You know, they say do a few different things and it still comes back, demolish the house. You know, that's, so it's not a new thing. Yeah, so even to the point that I was shown, someone showed me a photograph of a fire escape in a brand new government building in Hobart, and you virtually walk through the door and there's a what's it called, when the stair, what's it called? There's stairs go down around around the square. There's no landing, a winder. That's all. You walk out, there was a winder. So of course the first fire drill they had, everyone tripped down the fire stairs. That's a totally non-compliant fire stair, but the building is built, we don't know how to fix it, tick. So, yeah, I know, yeah, but it's a concrete stair going up. So, yeah, so that's the problem. There's lots of judgments that, well, it's too costly, too whatever, too hard, too whatever to fix. And that's, yeah. But the problem is that for a homeowner, they've the biggest investment most of them ever make in their life. And they're buying this object on the belief that it's going to be built properly. But the issue is that most of them are not built in various ways properly. And what that means for the long-term thing in the house. One of the things, the banks are actually starting to show some interest, because if you've got $1 million loan on a house, but it rots in 3 years, what does that mean? So, there's lots of, I've had many phone calls from lawyers, and there's no magic bullet yet. We need a few good cases that go high, which will either force the government to act with regulation, or will force it back on the professions. Yes, but the bank won't do it because it can't carry the risk. But define a building inspection. There are 3 there are three, not regulatory, legislative, what's the word? Yeah, there's 3 inspections. One is about, is the building located where it is? Not footings. They go and look at the footings, but it's purely to make sure that that footing is X metres from that fence. It's the engineer that approves the structure. The building inspector is purely making sure that the building is where it's supposed to be. The next inspection is a framing. So that, yeah, looks like it's been built to Australian Standard 694. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. But, yeah. But most of those building inspections, when everyone's gone to court, aren't worth the paper they're written on. Yeah. Yes. But yes, there's been a lot written about, yes, go on the, what's called, those chat sites? Yes. Mm. Yep, good. Yes. So, I guess that's like, was it Lauderdale? We'll be paying for a seawall there in the next 20 years out of our taxes because it's low-lying land and we've got climate change. England made several regions of the coastline of England not illegal to build on in the 1990s because we knew climate change was going to happen and they knew they were high-risk areas and they're not allowed to be developed. So it's just, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yes. Definitely. Yes. Now what is, it'll be that the government regulation will respond to, yes, and that's like the bushfire attack level stuff. That was the insurance company saying, oh, we're sick of paying out money for houses that caught fire. So even though our premiums all doubled, we got regulation at the same time. So, yeah. How we wrap buildings. So I guess, you know, at the moment, the Australian standard, 4200, just has the wrap coming down and yet you do something here. Doesn't say how you secure it, so you stop airflow, nothing like that, just sort of bring it down and put a staple every now and then, should be wrapped. Whereas other countries, it's how it's brought down, how it's terminated, how what happens under the building is terminated, so it provides a proper air seal, no thermal bridging. You can, I guess as we move, probably another, this is better still. Now both these are not vapour barriers, they are vapour permeable membranes. A lot of people refer to Americans where it says vapour barrier, but when you actually read the American regulations, they all have classes of vapour permeance, not about they're really permeable. Foil products and those sort of things are vapour impermeable. Oh, they're both. Yes, 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 yes. So yeah, so yep. And the same. Oh, and as we move further forward in an air tightness regulations, which might be another 20 years, or maybe 30 for Australia, we might actually have one here as well. And then we have a batten, so the plaster doesn't touch it. Now, if you look at many modern European buildings, they're built that way, and all the services run inside that space. All the electrical services, water pipes run in this cavity in here. So nothing breaks the insulation or air barrier properties of the wall. Yes. No, it gives you nothing. Because that cavity is going to be the same temperature as the air inside the house. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but just, no, it's going to be the same temperature as here. Now, there will be airflow. Yes, yes. What, I guess, how far, where's your plasterboard finish normally? About 12 mil off the floor? Yep. Yep. But the house moves. And the same about, we don't do any wrapping at the moment on our ceilings, and if you look at books overseas, it's quite common. There's been various people attempt to do it in Tasmania and on the mainland. The problem is they keep punching holes in it. And the moment you punch holes in it, it's not worth it. You've just wasted your money. So, yeah. All your services run below it. So that's a different, that coming back to that rethinking the whole construction process. Yep, as like, yeah, there might be one point where they all leave and it's fully sealed and taped and yes. 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 I could say in every single project I did in private practice, I spent a lot of my time teaching the builder all this stuff. Yeah. Windows, so I guess we talked about single glazing before. So windows have conductivity, which is the rate of heat flow, which we saw before, was it 4,000 watts per square metre going outward. We have solar heat gain, which we want here, of course, in winter, but not in summer. We have daylight transmittance, which is the amount of daylight that comes in. So some of these grey tints mean you need to turn the inside light on, which means you're now breaking the code because you're using electric light in the daytime. And the infiltration. The infiltration not being a rot talk around the frame, that's not part of the window, that's the builder job, but the leaking that happens between the seals. Now there's a website called the Window Energy Rating Scheme website, and most Australian manufacturers have their windows tested, and all 4 values are published. And they're all very important in terms of how your window works in your building. I'm doing a project for like a regional house in New South Wales at the moment, and there's some thing we're actually just looking at where to get windows from, because it's going to be probably 300 or 400 k's from where the house is, just so we can actually be confident about what the quality of the window system is. Yeah. Actually, maybe 600 k's. Thermal mass, I was talking before about where it is, what it is, and how it is. So I guess a window, if we put a window in the north and we're getting sun on the slab in winter, that's good. But what's happened to the slab on the south of the house? So what? Yes. Ooh, I did it again. So the slab here. How is this slab being warmed? It's not exactly. It's at 12-degree ground temperature. Yep. Yes. Yes. Yep. The 2 reasons. One, as you mentioned, is the solar angle, because I think the energy hits and there's 90% reflection, a 90-degree reflection, and based on what the emittance of the surfaces are and those sort of things, how much it absorbs and how much it reflects. And also in winter, we're looking at probably 300 to 400, maybe 450 watts, because of how much atmosphere before the sun hits us. Whereas in summer, we're getting 1,100 watts per square metre. And you think about that slab on the ground, it's competing with the 12-degree ground underneath it, whereas your wall, it's inside the conditioned space. Yeah. Yes. Yes, it is. Yes. Yes, please insulate your slabs. In Melbourne, no. And it was interesting, and that's Alpine, New South Wales, Victoria, yes. Inland Victoria, yes. Melbourne, because they get those heat waves, the insulated slab can actually cause the house to store too much heat. So it's interesting. It's easier not to worry about that. Actually, there's no need to. If you have slab edge insulation, if you have the insulation here and here, that virtually does most of the work for you. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So because I guess you can use quite simple polystyrene here, whereas you're going under the beams, it has to be very high dense. Yeah. And the higher density means it's got less insulation. True. I guess we found that most floors we're keeping temperatures quite sensible. It's just under the raft. Yeah. Yes. No. So you come back to, say if I was in Sydney, yes. Because Sydney, the average air temperature is about 16 degrees Celsius. Here, the ground is 12. So, there's a lot of these sort of rules of thumb and global statements where really, yeah. Yeah. And so I guess all, like I said, I was talking about thermal mass, wasn't I? So all these things store energy. So you can see glass wool insulation doesn't store much at all. Paper-faced plasterboard is good thermal mass, 741 kilojoules per cubic metre. Softwood is good thermal mass. Hardwood is good thermal mass. And that makes sense about the log cabins and the log construction in Japan, in America, and in Europe. That solid timber is good thermal mass. And similarly with the clay bricks, as we often see people using clay bricks as inside-out construction, and concrete. So, but you can see that the concrete, for it to actually store 1900 kilojoules, you'll need a lot of energy to actually warm it up as well. So this whole thing about what is the right mass. And I can say with, I had a few arguments regarding with Hobart Council, because we've got a brochure that talks about doing the whole house as inside-out construction. Yeah, it's great for a northern room or a room we've got energy inputs that the mass can use. For a southern room, the same as the concrete slab on the ground, the only energy that's going to warm that clay brick is an energy you add to the building. So having to balance those things out. Yes, yes. But water, that's a designer's dream, because we have to spend a lot of time working it out. Water vapour. So these are all examples of water vapour problems. And I've just got there, ventilation cannot be the principal method to manage excess water vapour within buildings. And most regulations in other developed countries state that quite clearly. It is not the method to manage water vapour. Sorry? No, okay. Okay. So if ventilation is the primary method, do you open every window in your house every day, all day? You've just broken the regulations. Right. That's a fact of life. And that's why other countries stipulate that in their regulations or in their supporting documents. You're not to call ventilation your method of managing water vapour. Full stop. If you are, you can lose your licence. Yes, yes. Yes. And so now again, see, I think there's like, so we can say, I'm asleep, I'm making 40 grams of water vapour per hour, or per hour per person. That's why in the old houses, when you had, like I do, I have a whole bedroom with my partner and I, and each morning there's condensation on the window. And so, these are, we can't change the physics of the situation. So depending on how we're cooking, what we're washing, how we're showering, all these activities, we're making water vapour. And based on I've had a few coroner's things regarding people who've died in houses, and we keep making water vapour until we've been dead for about 6 hours. So and then we're cold enough that we're not making water vapour. So we're the cause. We're doing it. And I guess as a quick introduction to a bit of physics and stuff. So this is what we call a psychometric chart. You can see the numbers on the bottom, they're the temperature. This line here is what we call saturation or dew point, or and these curvy lines are relative humidity. Now, if I then said, okay, we'll take a bit of that chart and say, okay, it's 21 degrees inside and its relative humidity about 60%. That's pretty common in a Tasmanian home in winter. And so we can plot that. We can say, okay, there's our 21 degrees, and we can plot that line up here. We can then plot our 60% relative humidity, meet this point here. What I can then do, I can then draw a line straight across and see where it hits saturation point. I can then drop that line down. Now what that shows is any surface of my building that is 13 degrees Celsius will have condensation form on it. My aluminium frame on my windows and my doors, my single glazing, the bottom plates where I've got that air leakage occurring, there's something else in my head and I got what it was, those downlights, all these points, an uninsulated plaster wall, that lath plaster wall that had condensation on the inside. Why? Because it's 13 degrees Celsius or cooler. And so that's why that's happening. It's pure physics. And so if we throw in a heater, what we're doing, we're moving where that 13 degrees happens further out into the wall. And depending on what our wall is made from, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And if I've got a plastic wrap outside that, I'm pushing the water vapour to the plastic wrap. It'll help my building rot quicker. So you have to be very careful about what's happening. So what's happening is that, you know, roof space, we might have supply ventilation, exhaust ventilation, which passively removes the water vapour, because we're not conditioning our roof space. It's purely a space that needs high ventilation rates to ensure the durability of its materials. The same as a subfloor. Subfloors require vents. Why? To remove the water vapour, so it ensures durability of the construction materials. But the house, well, unless we actually leave our windows open all the time, we're not letting the vapour out if we're saying it's done by ventilation. And, oh, I've got a movie, woohoo. So this has, it's got temperatures down here and a date. And at the moment you can see there's a foil product here. It comes off just after the video starts, or movie starts. And I want you to watch what happens to the steel, which is always interesting. There's sheet metal behind this. Okay, there. What happened to the, what, do you even notice it? I'll go again. I guess probably look at what the colour of the steel is, or what the tone of the steel is. So it's quite flat tone there. And now it's quite shiny. What would the shiny indicate? Moisture. And it was 18 degrees Celsius. Right? So this whole thing about understanding, it's, if I increase the humidity in the air, dew point goes up. If I increase the temperature, dew point goes up. If the outside conditions get more humid or something. So this relationship between inside and outside is continually moving. And so it's not just 11 degrees or 8 degrees when condensation occurs. It's, you know, we can see there it was 18 degrees and we got 8, and that whole sheet metal has got condensation forming on it. And that's going to be run down to wherever it can run down to. And because you can see condensation occurring in the roof and different things as well. And you can see the mould growing and all that sort of wonderful stuff. You're from a firebox? Yes? Yep. Yep. Yeah, we took that off, yes. Because the timber in this house was about 25% moisture content. Overseas, you have to pull the house down for that moisture content. Because all that moisture was just running into the walls every day. Yep. Yep. We were called when this house was 3 weeks old. Yes. So, yes. Around the entire perimeter, there was mould growing on the inside of the house. Mm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, that's why we didn't have a problem. When we didn't have houses, we didn't have a problem. It's just, you know, our expectations for it to be nice and comfy. Yep. Yes. Yep, you see, yeah, you can see the bats. Yep. Yes. Yes. So you think, so you've got all that water vapour from us inside the house, and it's leaking out wherever it can. So through the plasterboard, through whatever, through downlights, exhaust fans, yes. Yep. Oh no, this was externally vented, yes. But all that vapours, it's pushing through the walls, through the floor, and through the ceiling, based on the vapour pressure differentials. So just wherever it's just pushing out in every direction. And yes, so it's, some of it's going to the roof space. Then how the roof space then deals with that water vapour is the next step in the process. Yep. Oh no, go back a step. What is the occupant's job? To live, just live normally. Yep, and there's no clothes dryer. But then I go back a step. If a person uses a clothes dryer in the house, why isn't the house built to manage that? So who's at fault? Not the occupant, that's what they do. Yep. Yep. Probably because it was a very leaky building. Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. Yes, yeah, yep. Yep. Yeah, yes. Well, it's sucking all the air. Yeah, yes. Yeah. So I guess in summer the water vapour wants to push into the building because there's more water vapour in the air outside. In winter, I guess I should say, whenever the temperature outside the house in Tassie is warmer than inside the house, the water vapour wants to push in. Whenever the air temperature inside the house is warmer, the water vapour wants to push out. And so it's about how you think about that fabric that allows that to happen passively 24/7. It just happens in the background. You don't know it's happening. And so, for example, polyethylene, which is often used in building wraps, is vapour impermeable. So the vapour gets to that point and can't go any further. It wants to go, but it can't go any further. And it just keeps building up in the wall. So if I get a plastic bag and put over a saucepan in the stove, what happens to it? Okay, if I punch little pinholes in it, what's going to happen? It'll be the same. It's a con. Yes. No, it's not vapour permeable. Yes, it's a vapour resistor. Yes, and I've been to houses where, like that weatherboard photo I showed, I've been to other ones where wherever there's a pinprick, the board's fully rotted. Yep, from the inside. Just a jet stream of water vapour all the time on that part there. Yep. Yes. Impermeable. Which is a marketing term. It's like you can have cigarettes that don't have nicotine. Nicotine-free cigarettes. Yes. So what you really want is that the manufacturer's data should talk about a vapour permeance or a vapour resistivity, and they're inverse, like conductivity and resistance. Well, as Mr. Bunning said to me, his job is to make a profit for his shareholders, and when people stop buying it, he'll stop selling it. That's his responsibility. You have what's called yep. No, law says nothing. No, there's no law. And what's the name? And Hobart, the hardware shop in Hobart, K&D. Yeah, they stopped selling vapour. Yeah, I gave a talk probably about 5 years ago in Hobart, and they stopped selling vapour impermeable product then because they're a local business and then they do things. But what they found was most of the builders went to Bunnings because they get the cheaper product from Bunnings rather than actually buy the correct product. Yeah. So you can see that, vapour permeable, unpainted paper-based plasterboard, unpainted plaster, bulk insulation, rock wool, cellulose insulation, timber, clay bricks, concrete. So all those things are vapour permeable. Vapour is happily moving in and out. Our plastic paints range from being vapour semi-permeable. Actually, they have quite a range. And so the challenge is the paint on this end of the spectrum or that end of the spectrum, because we actually want it to not stop the vapour going through. And as I had a phone call regarding a house the other day, and the bedroom, it's a new home, and they've got permeable wrap and all these other things, and they've got condensation forming in the bedroom every night. And so our concern is that the paint might be too plastic, and it's not letting the vapour to leak out through the walls. They're just gradations in molecular properties. Yes. Yep. Yes. Yes. Yep. Yes. Yes. But then there's some of the newer wallpapers that came in the 80s and 90s were vinyl, and they caused lots of problems. So there's a, yes. Yes. So you have to go back to read the fine print about what the product is and whether it's right or wrong. Yes. Yes. No. And if you ring Mr. Dulux, they've got no idea. But if you ring Mr. Dulux in England or America, they will know. So it's, yeah. So what we've been, one of the things we've been pleading and reports to government is that we need to actually shift where all Australian construction products include that property on their information. But it might be 2022 or 2025 before we get that. Yeah. And so I said before, I had the roof spaces. So whether it's a cathedral roof or an attic roof, it needs to be vented. And so you've got venting between your sheet metal and your sarking, and you've got venting between your sarking and your insulation. So no matter which sort of roof it is. And I guess, so I've probably been talking too long now. What have I managed? So I guess a traditional wall, we had a water barrier on the outside, bit of sheet metal, bit of timber, and we had our lather and plaster on the inside. That was it. There was nothing between them. And then we said, oh, we need to add some insulation in, which we did. And we found, oh, it's getting wet because the weatherboards are wet. Oh, it's getting wet because the bricks are wet. Oh, we need to actually put something. So we said, well, we need to put a barrier in there. But the problem is most of those barriers that were stuck in were the polyethylene and actually created more problems than they've solved. So then we need to think, well, no, this is where we need to have that cavity, which we call a drainage layer. Other countries have, they call it drainage battens, drainage zone, which is that gap between the cladding system, whatever it is, brick, timber, steel, cement sheet, and the framing system. So the water vapour can go out. If it gets cold, it condenses, but it's outside the building. Also, that barrier is now your primary water barrier. So that membrane, because weatherboards aren't waterproof, bricks aren't waterproof, cement sheet's not waterproof, all those things permit water through. So your building membrane becomes your first line defence as a proper water barrier. It's also a vapour control layer because it's allows vapour in and out between the conditioned frame and building and the unconditioned cavity. And it's that air barrier. We're talking about how is it terminated, how is it taped, where does it come to stop airflow between inside and outside. And Gore-Tex does that. You know, your hiking jacket, it allows you to leak out all your leak out all your water vapour, and it can rain and it doesn't come in. So it's not a new thing. So again? It would, wouldn't it? Yeah, no, yeah. It'd be quite comfy and chunky, wouldn't it? Now, how that meant, and I won't go into details of this graph, but this is a calculation of the temperature drop through a wall system. So we've got 20 degrees inside, 2 degrees outside, and I can't remember what the relative humidity is. And so we can actually calculate temperature and humidity through the wall. And we end up with this sort of thing. So this is a traditional wall, plaster, that wall frame, the cladding system. And so it's thermally bridged because these are all touching. It's not vapor permeable and there's no ventilation. And we have about 6 kilos of water buildup in the wall per square metre. This one, okay, so we've left it the same, but we actually put a vapor permeable membrane here. We're still getting 6 kilos of water in the wall because it's all thermally bridged. Here we've actually put that cavity in. So we've stopped the thermal bridging. We've got ventilation, but it's still vapor impermeable. And you can see how this line's stopping here. So the vapor is trying to go to the house and it can't. We've still got 6 kilos of water in the wall per square metre. And this one, we've got thermal bridging's done, it's permeable, and we've got ventilation. And you can see how the whole line's changed its shape. So what's happening is that the vapor is condensing on both sides of this line, and it's continually allowing that vapor and moisture to leave the building. You can't stop people say to stop condensation. No, they're not stopping condensation, just shifting how and where it occurs.
So the ventilation is what you're doing about.
Yes, the cavity, yes.
If you've got a building product like door rail or insulator or something like that.
Yep. That's different. Yes. Yes, it works. Yeah, because it's continually allowing the vapor through.
Okay.
Yes. And you will get condensation occurring in a straw bar with earthen render. You get condensation occurring in the earthen render, normally on the inside edge of the earthen render because it's about our stuff for. With a mud brick, it used to occur about 50 mils in. With Hempcrete, yeah, it's probably about 30 to 40 mils in, depending on the temperature difference. Yeah, yes, yes, yes. Yes. Yep. Mm. No, because, so if it was a pure clay brick, no. If it's a more than about 5% or 3 to 5% cement stabilising, no, because the cement does its thing. There's a grey area there where things can go wrong. But because it's a homogeneous thing, as the vapour is turning to it's condensing, it's just being absorbed by the whole system. And then as the brick warms up again, it just leaves. So it's quite homogeneous. Yeah. It's not being stored in the brick. It's being able to leave and come without too much energy. Yeah. You're not going to have a mud brick house. Yes. Mm. Yeah. This just talks about air, but what the regulations say about air, how it's supposed to be providing fresh air and how we do it. So I won't go too much on that. But what it's relying on is that air pressure differential between inside and outside. So on the windward side, we have a positive air pressure. On the back part, we have the negative pressure, and how windows do and don't work. So you can say, oh, yeah, we've got cross ventilation, but if we close the door, we don't have cross ventilation. So in terms of what beliefs are and what realities are. And in the UK, it actually states what is the required airflow based on what the function of the space is and how many people are in it. And so the regulations state you have to have this amount of airflow. But if I'm closing the window in Australia, I don't get that, do I? So what we're doing in Australia, we're relying on our buildings being leaky, which is thermal bridges, to meet these requirements. And every time people talk about air tightness, they say, but we won't be able to breathe. Oh, but we need air tightness to manage vapour. We need air tightness to manage energy. We need air tightness for many different reasons. So that's a bit dumb. And I guess also in the British, this is from Evans, he's written a book in England about how buildings work. And so if we have a 5% cross ventilation and our windows open at least 30%, we get 6 to 8 air changes per hour. So I have to do some maths now, because I have to calculate volume of rooms and blah, 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 and what that means. But if the windows open 30% or less, it's down to 3 to 4. Now, our regulations in Australia haven't changed since the 1970s. The 5% floor area for operable windows. Who's installed awning windows recently in the last 10 years? How much they open? Less than 30%? Okay, but generally, but less than 30%? Well, in England, you've got to double your amount of open windows. Yeah. So, but in England, if you're using those windows, you have to double your operable windows to allow the ventilation to work. And yeah, so goes on. And stack vent and what single-sided. So if you want single-sided, you have to have more windows and stack ventilation. So they've actually said, depending on what your ventilation strategy is, how much needs to be operable to provide ventilation. And England's probably the most backward of the European countries. Yep. So having one on that side high and one on this side low. Yep. A traditional double hung window where you can actually open both. Yes. Yeah. Our regulations are based on double hung windows. Yep. That's why it's 10% for daylight and 5% for ventilation, because when you open top and bottom, yeah. But yeah, so maths, you need to do a bit of maths to work out what that means when you're trying to convert it. And as I said before, who leaves their windows open all the time? So we're all breaking the law because not allowing enough fresh air into our houses. So we have different options. We have supply air. We have, so there's various companies that say, oh, buy our thing, we pump air into your house. Okay, but where's it go? If I've got a house that's supposedly airtight, how's it pump? It's like, you have the toilets in some pubs or restaurants, and you open the door and the thing goes, yay, and the door closes and the thing goes, because you need supply and exhaust. So just pumping air in doesn't do anything. There's other ones that say, oh, we extract the air from your house. If you're extracting the air, how's the fresh air getting in? And then we have what we call balanced ventilation, where the systems look at, okay, yes, we need supply air and exhaust air on a balanced arrangement. And the mixed mode is where you might have that plus a bit of natural ventilation. So your windows have sensors and different things, and says your window's open, I turn off the mechanical system. But I've got a CO2 sensor that says, oh, your window's open, but the CO2 levels are still too high. I need to turn the fan on. So, so as we move more and more towards really energy efficient housing, we need to think more and more about how we move to understanding mechanical ventilation. 1/3 of the American residential building code is on mechanical ventilation. 1/3 of their building regulation. And so understanding that is really, really important. And so how we move forward in that space, I have architects who bragging about they had a blower door test and their numbers really low. And I say, so what's the mechanical ventilation? Like, what? So what are the people breathing in their house? Generally 5 air changes per hour at N50 is internationally recognised as the benchmark between leaky house and an airtight house where you need mechanical ventilation. Now, these mechanical ventilators from overseas don't use much energy. They're very low energy products. Look like this. So they're taking the warm air from the house as exhaust air and using that to preheat the incoming air. I was in Perth the other month, and I was in a tiny house that was being finished off, and the thing was literally about that round, about that thick. It was just going in the wall, in the kitchen wall. It all fitted in that little gadget, and that was taking the moist air from the kitchen and the bathroom and using that moist air to preheat the incoming air and providing fresh air to the house at the same time. So, yes. And often, you can see that it says water drains through, so often some of them include, so depending on which system you have, they'll have, even the most basic ones, take the moisture out of the air and dump that moisture. Yeah. Yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Right here. When you're breathing, yeah. But here, yes. No, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah. So lounge heights. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. What was it? Yeah. Yep. They were the gas ones. Yep. And I've had people die in containers, and we've had to show them how cold the containers get. And I guess, these systems look at how they have supply and exhaust air through the house. So they can be quite simple ones, like I was saying that one where we just had it in the kitchen wall, and it was a small house, it was plenty to the whole house, to larger houses where you have squiggly vents doing their things through the house. Yes, or within it. Yes. Human health. So this is just about mould. This is 2009 from the World Health Organization. Sufficient epidemiological evidence is available from studies conducted in different countries and under different climatic conditions to show that the occupants of damp or mouldy buildings, both houses and public buildings, are at increased risk of respiratory systems, respiratory infections, and exacerbation of asthma. That's been internationally accepted since 2009. We have no regulations whatsoever in Australia. Most of the developed countries do have explicit regulations in their building codes about no condensation, no mould. Full stop. We don't. Yes. Yeah. Yes. But that shouldn't be, but yeah, once again, I will, yeah. Because once again, it comes back, this belief that it's the occupants at fault, not the building. And it's the building that's at fault. So, yes. Yes, it does. Yep, yep, yeah, it does, yeah. Mm. Yep, it is. And I guess we all heard about the issues about Hobart Hospital. I had many late night phone calls with the building regulators regarding Denali High School. I could say that it wasn't necessarily fixed the way it should have been. Hobart Hospital, Perth Hospital, Adelaide Hospital, 3 hospitals in Brisbane. So as the public ones hit the news the most, but people's houses, interesting, I've been to many houses with varying degrees of mould. I've had people ring me with, one lady from the northwest said, "Oh, my kid's got asthma." So, "Oh, okay." Oh, and the doctor said one's got rhinosinusitis. I thought, so you got any family that live nearby? "Oh yeah, mum lives a few k's up the road. Get the kids out of the house now. This is a lifelong illness you're giving them because of the mould in your house." Now, 25% of people are genetically predisposed, predisposed to a significant immunology reaction to mould. It means they could sit next to you and suddenly start running nose, all sorts of things, and you're fine. 25% of the population. Now, those genetic markers, once they're hit, you can open a car, a fruit and veg shop, a supermarket, and it straight away, where there's mould present, mould spores present. The rest of us, if we're in a situation which is significant, our body eventually trips. And once again, we've then got that lifelong condition. And whenever we enter a space with that condition, we will then immediately respond. Our immune system immediately kicks into gear. And so that's why it's internationally recognised as a significant issue, just not in Australia. And so we go visit houses, and my staff have to wear masks and things. But then what was doing, we had a German lady ring us about 3 years ago, and she was really concerned. We went, house looks fine. We're up in the roof space, and she took me to a rafter and had a patch of mould about this big on it. She said, "That's really bad." I think, oh. She said, "But that's illegal in Germany." So just that different perception of what we accept compared to what other people in other countries are willing to accept. And I guess in that context, government and private rental agencies, in their leases, condensations of mould, and mould is a problem of the home occupant. It actually says it on Housing Tasmania's website. Yep. And the moment we change the regulation, well then all these, so, you must leave a window open in every room. It actually states it in the documents all year round. And then architects and designers and engineers, nothing to do with me. We built a code. We've done what we're supposed to do, and you must be causing the problem, not us. And builders the same. We built the building as per the approved drawings. Blame the architect, the designer, and or it's been built to code. Yeah. Yes. 5 years? 6 years? 6 years? Yeah. Yep. But we're the only university doing it. Yes. 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 Even in New Zealand, they get taught it. Yes. So define 12 hours a year of professional development. I can go to a Laminex breakfast, I get 2 points. I can go to the, yes, so, yeah, okay, yeah. I will say that Tasmania is, because we've been very active in this space for the last 5 years, I would say that across the sector, we're probably the most active compared to most other states. The stuff, we did a guide to the state government in 2014. We know that's been in common use in New South Wales, Victoria and ACT. That slideshow I had at the beginning is the next generation of that guide, and that'll be released in Tasmania in the next few months. And then we know that through intergovernmental agreements, it'll be picked up by Victoria and ACT again. The problem is that they're a guide because there's no regulation. It's a, what's the word? It's not, you can't force people to do it. But if the building owner, so the person who's the client, wants it done, and that's how they can actually, that's what you can ask for. And so, yeah. Yes, yes. Yep. And I've even had builders ring me and say, look, this architect or building owner has got, or draftsman's got nothing. And I said, look, because then they've got the documents to build. And I said, look, just print out that guide from the government and take it to the person you've got a contract with, which is a homeowner, and say, look, this is what the government says I should be doing. And say, get it. So just look, there's different avenues of who's a contract with who, what's the protections in place, and how to, yes, try and make change. Yeah. Oh, yes. 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 On one of those houses, they had MDF reveals, the timber bits around, everyone was expanded. And the wall was full of water and full of mould. Yep. Yeah. So we've had a few like that. There's a house up at West Launceston I looked at last year. Actually, no, yeah, it would be just over a year ago. And that, it had frameless windows, single glazed, and with the water, the sensor, the microwave sensor, every wall was full of water. Yeah, yeah. The Americans use dogs. So there's different methods being explored. I'd hate to be that dog. You must have a very short living life. Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah. Give me a box of tissues and say, yep. Just three very slides on very quick slides. This is a house we did at Evandale, probably 6, 7 years ago. And so this house had northern medium mass, so the whole thing about how much mass we had, how much we didn't. Bits of double brick, but was all insulated. Mass walls inside the building and some inside-out construction. The southern bedroom was very lightweight because how to heat it. So it was very lightweight construction, but well insulated. So these questions about what is effective mass. So north is the top of the page. So you can see this is a double brick wall through here, but you can see the thick line of insulation running all the way through between the bricks and up through here. This is all very lightweight, but brick veneer on the outside. The tiles on the front. And this was a masonry wall, a concrete block wall through here, which heated the bedroom for free because it's got all that energy in that living space, and it's just storing energy and giving it to the bedroom at night. We also put a basic little brick vent, top and bottom of that brick wall. And we originally said to the client, look, just open it in winter, but she leaves it open all the time. And it's just providing that excess heat from the living room is just heating the bedroom for free. So balancing those sorts of things out. Sorry? Yes, it has actually done better than planned. Yes, much better. Yes, it's good. Oh, this room, I guess you don't want a room to go below about 13 degrees Celsius. 13 to 15. Actually, it's 13. 15 is an international benchmark for a range of respiratory disorders. So 15 is cool, and it's that sort of benchmark temperature. Yes. It's fun when you're young, but as you get older, things go wrong. This is another house, and I guess with every project, you're sort of balancing what your clients come to me and say, we want a low energy home. That's funny what some clients call low energy compared to others. We've got one house which is out at Relbia, which is set at 22.5 degrees, give or take half a degree since construction back in 2010. No heating, no cooling. It's just it. I would say it's 2 still. Client loves it. And they go to Queensland and get the flu or colds because the houses there are cold. So, but this house had too much glass. What I mean by, and that's the wind wall, the elevation. and I not argued, discussed with the client to reduce glazing. I know we want that much reduced glazing. So this still was probably about 8 stars as a rating, but it's got 2. And I guess there's this issue that all that glass is going to feel cold. If you're sitting with that glass in winter, you're going to feel cold. If you're a few metres back, less so. My office upstairs is bloody freezing at the moment. The air temperature's fine. But I've got this window beside me that's losing 4,000 watts per square metre. And my fingers are freezing because the window is sucking all the energy. So, so understanding that, so balancing between what you do. This is a house that's currently just finished sketch design, getting design development. This is for Alpine, New South Wales. For those who know straw bale, yep, it's a straw bale house. So it's R10 in the walls, and we're pretty happy with the glazing ratio. And this is you have mud brick wall through here and here. Although we're thinking about making this one out of hempcrete, just because it's less mass and how it might work better. So things to do. Yes. Yep. There's an attic up above the kitchen, so you can see the stairs going up here. So that's the master bedroom and ensuite above this. So the roof actually, I could show you a 3D model, but yes, the roof is actually a curved roof, and it's its lowest point here. Because the house gets wider, it's a higher curve at this end, just naturally. And yeah, so. Actually, it does look very much like an endemic beetle of the area. Yes. Nice. Yeah, things to do. So yeah, there's no magic bullet. Our role is to manage risks. So understand what the risks are and how we manage them. Whew. Thank you for being so attentive. Sure. Oh, that's good. Oh, yeah, a PCS student. He's put up with me for 5 years, poor person. Yes. 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 Yeah, but I guess if I go to that, how about that? This doesn't do its automatic play. The wall. So yeah, so you can see here how that's a quick. Well, that's the same, but we've got the slab bed insulation and the other insulation coming up. So polystyrene, expanded polystyrene, is vapor semi-permeable. It allows the vapor to travel through. Extruded polystyrene is vapor impermeable. Rock wool. Most other countries require you to put a layer of rock wool outside your building. It's a rigid bat insulation. There's a company in WA that provides it in Australia. When you see photos of buildings being built overseas, you see the frame go up and you see the whole building get wrapped in greeny grey stuff, which is rock wool insulation, and then the membrane goes around that. So they're getting rid of that thermal bridging. And because the other risk is that with I'm not going project I'm looking at the moment, but plywood. So if the plywood, there's a person who's building things into plywood structures. If you put if you have the cavity, it's how the plywood can manage that moisture. But if we actually had the whole thing wrapped in rock wool, well, dew point's now moved out there, so the plywood won't get condensation. So it's some of those sorts of things about, because we're not going to stop condensation occurring, we're just going to try and work out, we're going to try and force it to occur in a particular location. And yes. Yeah, exactly, yeah. So understanding, Americans, they overclad all their house from about 20 years ago with OSB. That's the chunky, oriented strand board. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Yep. They start at 1,200 centres because that's how long the sheets are, and so all of it's insulation. But then what they had was a lot of problems with the OSB rotting because of dew point occurring. So then they started wrapping everything with a layer of insulation to protect the OSB. Yeah.